Good evening. It is time for the Fumblerooski Podcast by Power 88 Dean Radio. I am your host, Adam Wright, along with co-host Justin Tucker. So we have a lot to talk about today. We have the Aaron Rodgers and Packers drama. We're going to do a little bit more NFL draft coverage. We're going to cover our winners and losers, and we're also going to cover the Bears trade up. When they traded up for Justin Fields, we didn't get to cover that. There's also some weird news with Tim Tebow. He returns to the NFL. We're going to talk about that. But first, we have a special guest to help us talk about the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers. We have a lifelong Packers fan and my personal friend, Patrick Edwards, out of Marist College. Pat, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good, Adam. How about yourself?
Doing well. I'm doing well. We're out of school. You have, my understanding, you have 3 more weeks, correct?
I'm still in the thick of things. I still got finals and everything. Life's going great.
Yeah, that's it's rough. But so you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I mean, there's not much to say. I'm a resident Packers fan. Grew up in New England from the first Super Bowl win to the last, then left when they got bad. Much more friendly with Giants fans than I am Patriots fans.
Yeah, that's understandable. I've got to say, it's as much I'll admit, growing up with you, I never actually thought about how hard it is to be openly a Green Bay Packer fan in Patriots territory and just kind of have to sit there. And I mean, you didn't just take it. You were, but it was interesting living with that. So it's interesting. But anyways, Pat, what are your thoughts on everything that's going on with Aaron Rodgers? Pat?
Yeah, I cut out. I'm not sure what happened. I'm back.
What are your thoughts on everything that's going on with Aaron Rodgers?
I don't like it. I feel like I should be used to off-season drama right now, but it's never something you get used to. But I don't know. We're hearing conflicting reports. John Kuhn, James Jones keep saying that he's going to be back. AJ Hawk seems to think that he's going to be back. All the media talking heads who always talk about how terrible of a person Rodgers is and how much Rodgers hates everybody and Rodgers isn't good. They're the guys saying that he's going to leave, and they're throwing out teams like Denver and Cleveland as his possible landing grounds. Cleveland's not looking for a quarterback, so that's obviously a dead-end take. I don't want to get too comfortable, but it doesn't seem like he's going to leave at this point. But you never know. I know the Packers front office has been inept for so long that the relationship's going to take some repairing, but I think we're in a far better spot this week than we thought we were last week.
Absolutely. There was you have a point there with all these conflicting reports. Like, you really don't know what to think. There's all this stuff in the media, all these different players. And I mean, you don't want to take too much into account, like all these former players, but I'm sure players who used to know them, I'm sure it holds some water. But it is interesting to see all these different reports coming out saying, "Oh, I think he's gone. I think he's leaving." I remember earlier on, Brett Favre was talking about it. He was comparing it to when he left after Aaron Rodgers was drafted. So that's an interesting comparison. Now, my personal opinion, I don't think he's going to be traded now, but if he leaves, it'll be in the next coming years. But it's really tough to tell at this point. I said earlier this offseason, and this was more of a bold prediction, that he is eventually going to leave. But because of what he said in the aftermath of the NFC Championship game, but the fact that this is becoming reality so quickly is just mind-boggling to me, and just really a testament to how crazy this offseason has become, with 3 franchise quarterbacks, 3 of the NFL's premier quarterbacks potentially coming onto the market. Deshaun Watson with all that drama and a lot of other drama off the field that we won't speak of. There's the whole There's the whole thing going on with Russell Wilson that there's a chance he could go in the coming years. And now Aaron Rodgers. This has just been it's just so much drama this offseason. But I gotta say, as we continue to cover sports, especially football during this time, we're very lucky to be able to, for a startup like we've had, to have such a wild offseason. But Justin, what are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers?
As far as the situation as a whole, I don't think it's most favorable to be either a Packers fan or just the Packers organization right now. If you have a disgruntled quarterback that has made it clear he does not want to stay, you have to get rid of him as soon as possible, because it makes it very difficult to do things. And even if you wanted to trade him, you want to get up as much capital to get him, draft capital, because everybody knows he wants to leave. So they probably lowball him and give a less than expected capital for him, even though he's worth way more. But based upon him being disgruntled, him not wanting to be there anymore, that they'll probably make him want to forcefully take that deal. But it's not looking too good for the Packers right now, because based upon what Devontae Adams said, if he leaves, he's not so sure about his future, because Aaron Rodgers is his guy. For you to go to bat like that, it makes me kind of wonder the situation as a whole. And hopefully he does stay. I can't really picture him anywhere else other than Green Bay, but unless they can get this situation better, and Aaron Rodgers actually is you know what, I want to stay in Green Bay long term. Let's see if we can figure out a way to make this situation right. It's going to be an uphill battle for the Packers to try and win.
Yeah. So Pat, there has been a report coming out today, and I believe, I'm not sure if it was around yesterday as well, but the Packers actually offered a long-term contract extension to Aaron Rodgers. Reportedly very high offer. It would make him the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. At apparently above $45 million. There's not many details on it, but do you think that would be enough for him to stay based on what you're hearing about it?
So I haven't looked that closely about it. I've been busy the last few days, but one thing I did hear, and tell me if this is wrong, because it might be, but almost none of it was guaranteed money, in which case it's more like the Taysom Hill deal where they gave him 9 figures, and that's fine, because whenever he's not of use to them anymore, they can cut him and be done with him. So if there's almost no guaranteed money and he turned it down, I don't blame him. I don't think that would be the final offer, but it would be concerning for the Packers if it was $45 million and a substantial amount of that was all guaranteed. And it's concerning either way, because either you have your franchise quarterback, a Hall of Famer, a guy who has made a case for being one of, if not the best quarterbacks to ever pick up a football. Either he's going to leave or he's going to take a hell of a lot of your cap space, and you're not going to be able to have moves to re-sign Devontae Adams next year, to re-sign Jair Alexander next year, to go out and pick other weapons like a cornerback or an offensive line. So I don't think there's a win-win at $45 million either way. But two things to remember are, A, Aaron Rodgers is under Packers control for the next year, which means that it's not a nightmare scenario yet. It's a bad scenario, but there is time to salvage a relationship or ship him off, whatever. And we haven't heard Aaron Rodgers speak. I don't want to go too far into anything, sink my teeth too far into any theory until I see him on the Pat McAfee show, because there have been so many things that have been said this past season and this off season. The media's made it a spectacle only for him to go on and say, yeah, no, it was venting frustration, or I didn't mean by anything by that, or I knew it would be fun to watch what happened. So from what I've heard so far, I don't know if the deal's as bad as it might seem up front. I don't think there's any way to say that the Packers are winning the deal, whether we get it done or not. But I want to hear from the horse's mouth before I go too far into it, because we still haven't heard Aaron say anything.
Right. So Pat, do you think it would be concerning if if he actually doesn't wind up speaking on this, and he just remains quiet and he doesn't shoot down any of these rumors, or the media that's constantly just piling on all this drama that's going on? Do you think that it becomes concerning if he doesn't speak at all?
It'd be nice to be in the know. I'm the kind of guy that likes to know what's going on so I can have a say in a situation. Obviously, I'm not Packers management. But if I were Packers management, I wouldn't like that. I'm sure he's got a dialogue going on with the team. And I think there are some good things that might come out of him not speaking. He wasn't the one that leaked this. He's not adding fuel to the fire. He's not straight out coming out and saying, yeah, trade me, release me, whatever, I want to be done. But the fact that he's not dispelling any rumors isn't exactly comforting as a Packers fan either. So I don't think we can entirely know until he does say anything. In some ways, I like the fact that he's quiet. In some ways, I really just wish he'd speak, regardless of what he's going to say. That way we can know and not make this a spectacle for the next 3 months of the offseason.
Right, sure. I'm sure it'd be very comforting for a lot of Packers fans out there if he was just to step up to the podium, or at least come onto the Pat McAfee show and say, look, this is all just noise. It's off-season drama. This is all nothing. I plan to be a Packer for life. However, if he stays silent, the reason I asked about if he doesn't actually speak at all is I remember I just look back at a lot of different players who have been rumored to leave. And one thing I found in common with most of them is that whenever there was all these rumors swirling, they never shot them down. They never spoke. And then when it was time to leave, they just left. Outside of Kyrie Irving, who, like a jackass, walked into the stadium and said, "Hey guys, I plan on re-signing," and then that next offseason he left. Outside of that, I hate that guy. I'd love to say more adjectives, but I'd like to keep this show at least PG.
I thought you liked him. I thought he was your favorite player.
Until he left after saying that, and then he went to the Nets, and that team barely made the playoffs. We're not going to get in the NBA, but there was LeBron James who was rumored to leave. So it's interesting how I'd like to hear him speak as well, and if he doesn't, that'll also say a few things as well.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, that you just pointed out 2 NBA players to compare that scenario to, because I do think the NFL is kind of turning into the NBA in the fact that the players are exuding more power now. You know, you never used to see Brett Favre, when his split happened, was, I'm going to come back to the Packers. No, I want to retire. No, I want to come back to the Packers. And all the Packers said was, no, we're releasing you. You're not coming back. There wasn't a trade me. Once he left, he got traded to the Jets, but he always wanted to come back. Whereas in the NBA now, you're seeing the decision from LeBron James or James Harden and Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook either forced their way off teams or sign with the team just because they have a good chance to win. I hope the NFL isn't going in that direction, but we're seeing a lot of guys. Tom Brady's leaving, going to a team where he can get players and win. We're seeing a lot of guys force their way through trades, and it's kind of heading in that direction, which I think is emblematic of Rodgers. Whether or not he's actually pushing this, and it looks like there's, at least to an extent he is, that didn't happen 10 years ago, and that's becoming more the norm now.
Yeah, I have drawn a lot of comparisons for the NFL to the NBA. Whether or not it's turning into that, and putting some thought into it. Like, I'm sure the NFL, a lot of the players will have a lot more power, depending on the position. But that's just the thing. It'll depend on the position. It also depends a lot on the roster and the philosophy around there. With the NBA, it's a star-driven league. If you have the superstars and you have like some sort of chemistry to some level, you're gonna win games. But it doesn't matter about the coaching or the role players. They really don't matter that much. And in the NFL, it actually does. You need an offensive line. You need a good defense. You need all these weapons. It's not defined by the quarterbacks. It's a quarterback-driven league for the most part because that's the final piece to winning a championship. But I just don't I've thought about it a lot because of all the drama that's happened this offseason. And while it has been a little scary to see what's happening, I don't think it's going to turn completely into the NBA. But we'll see we'll be able to draw some comparisons in the coming years, and it'll probably continue. But it's an interesting scenario. But do you have anything else you want to mention about the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, anything like that before we move on?
I just hope it gets solved soon.
It'd be an interesting situation to see him end up in Denver. It's a nice roster they have going there.
It'd be reminiscent of Peyton Manning, but that is where the team control for 2021 comes into play because he can't just leave on his own. So that's the other thing some people have said is they think retirement is more likely than going to another team. If I were looking at it objectively from an outsider's view as a Pats fan or a Ravens fan, I'd probably want him to go to Denver. I just like Peyton Manning turned into a beast, won another Super Bowl, won another MVP. It'd be fun to see if Rodgers could do that, but as a Packers fan, I'm a little partial, and I'd like to see him stay in Green Bay and try to win another one there.
Absolutely. It was – I could relate a little bit as a Patriots fan. It was sad to see Tom Brady go. I will say I'm happy for him to see him win without to be able to prove that he can do it on his own. But it's – that championship that the Bucs won was not the Patriots championship, and it's sad. And imagine that, Pat. Aaron Rodgers goes to Denver. They win a championship.
It'd be really nice to win a championship with one of the best defenses of the decade and all these guys following you and Rob Gronkowski coming out of retirement. Imagine Jordy Nelson came out of retirement. Rodgers got the number one defense, and also Devontae Adams came over and all these other things. I would hope he could win in that. If not, he blows any shot he has of being in the argument for the GOAT.
Yeah, Jordy. There's a big difference between Jordy Nelson when he left and Rob Gronkowski when he left. Didn't feel like Jordy Nelson had anything left, whereas Rob Gronkowski, he had a little. While he was a shell of himself, don't get me wrong. It felt like he was still able to. He could still play to some level, but if a Devontae Adams level player went to play in that situation, I assume you draw that comparison to like Antonio Brown. Is that what? I
kind of just I brought some players over. Let's see if he can bring some players over. But also, you look more deeper into it, it could even out a little bit. Nelson's a shell of himself. Adams is in his prime, and you got two past their prime, but still very good players in Rob Gronkowski and Antonio Brown. Never mind all the other receivers that the Bucs came loaded with.
Yeah. Sure. I think it was more when I talk about like the Bucs bringing in taking a team from 7-9 to 11-5 and winning the Super Bowl. I think it's more impressive, not because their roster was bare in these past years before Brady. It was more because it's become such a losing culture in Tampa Bay. It's not a buttoned up organization. It's an organization that's had talent but is underachieved, and they also had a pick throwing machine in Jameis Winston for the past few years. And not just him, it was also I'm forgetting his name, Ryan Fitzpatrick. They also had there. Fitzmagic. But it's interesting how Jameis Winston was so bad he had to get eye surgery. But so I guess we're going to move on and get into a little bit more draft coverage. And this is something that we weren't able to cover in our last episode because we had all these different segments that we wanted to cover before that. But The Chicago Bears, we've been talking about them a little bit this offseason, how they have a very good roster around them, but they didn't quite have the quarterback. I always said that they were a quarterback away and a little bit of offensive line help from being in contention. And they trade up and they take their guy. They had the number 20 pick. They trade up to number 11 and they take Justin Fields. Now, if this guy pans out and this turns out to be a stud quarterback, Deshaun Watson, as they're comparing him to, this is a team that could be a Super Bowl contender. But Justin, what do you think about the Bears trading up and getting their guy?
Well, first things first, I always thought the Red Rifle could get it done in Chicago. After the way I saw him playing, I'm sorry, I couldn't hold that one in. But no, I think they had to because of who they had at quarterback. They had Andy the Red Rifle Dalton at quarterback, and I respect him. But he's not Justin Fields. So if they had the opportunity to trade up and give away a first-round pick to the Giants, who blew their first-round pick this year, I'm all for it. Because if that means I get a franchise quarterback for a minimum of 5 years, I get him on the cheap to help me start winning now with the win now team with the Chicago Bears, who could contend for the playoffs like they did last year, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I think it's a win-win all around, even if they had to give up the first to do it, because I felt like they had to do it because of the state of the QB room there.
Absolutely. It's kind of one of those things where they have the roster, they have the team that's built to win now. They just franchised their number one wide receiver, who's arguably one of the best wide receivers in the game. They basically had to franchise him to get back here, and we felt like the writing was on the wall that he would leave, that he would most likely leave if they didn't franchise him. So this is a team that's built to win now. They have a very good running back in David Montgomery. Their offensive line is improved. Their defense is elite, among the best in the NFL. So it all comes down to the quarterback. And let's be real, I love hyping up sarcastically the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, but he's not going to get it done regardless of how good this roster is. So they had to trade up. They took the chance. This was a great move. Now this could go one of two ways. It's either they've turned their franchise around and they're going to have this stud quarterback for the next 15, 20 years, or however long he stays here. Or this could be one of the biggest busts, and this will go down as just a testament to the Bears' luck at quarterback over their entire existence, where they've never been able to bring in a legitimate elite level quarterback. But yeah, Pat, what do you think about it?
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time they had a quarterback bust. Let's not forget that they haven't had a Pro Bowl quarterback in 20 years. They made a Super Bowl berth since then. They had Jay Cutler, the best quarterback in their franchise. Or sorry, they did have one Pro Bowler. His name was Mitch Trubisky, and he's seen as a bust. And that's, I think, kind of unfair to Mitch Trubisky. He's a good quarterback. If that guy got taken in the second or third round, I mean, come on now. He made a Pro Bowl. He got the Bears to the playoffs twice. He's just not a second-round pick. You don't trade up ahead of Pat Mahomes for Mitch Trubisky. But we'll see what Fields can do. I mean, I have it out for Gettleman now because how do you let them get Fields? I think he's set up to win. I think the argument that he's not going to do well just because he's an Ohio State quarterback, that's not fair. The college doesn't make it. Plus, he's got weapons. The defense is phenomenal in Chicago right now, as it typically is. But, I mean, yeah, I think it's hit or miss. I don't know which way it's going to go. I feel more like it's going to go well now that he's on the Bears. I hope he does fine, but they don't win. But I think it was a pretty good trade. I think you could call them one of the winners of the draft just for that one pick. They set themselves up to win. They swindled the pick out of Dave Gettleman and moved up and got their guy. And they got the best quarterback remaining in the draft. That's something that they didn't do last time they went out and got a quarterback, and they were picking second overall. So I think Ryan Pace learned some lessons. I think the Bears might be a little bit dangerous in 2021.
I agree. Yeah, see, as to your point that people really unfairly hate on Mitch Trubisky, I think the reasoning for that is that they passed on Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, who've ever since become premier quarterbacks in this league. So
Mhm.
that just stings a little bit, and of course, a lot of other NFL fans are going to give the Bears crap for that because they have Mitch Trubisky, who's, I mean, at best he's just an above average quarterback, and it just becomes one of those things where he's, I mean,
He
that's
was
going to
set up
be.
to fail. He was set up to fail. You don't take a guy like that number 2. He's a good quarterback, and I like the kid. He seems like a good guy, but he's a good guy if you take him 20th overall, not second. Then he's
Well,
bound to be a disappointment.
that's the thing. He was highly touted at the time as a top 5 quarterback. He wasn't thought of to go late in the first round or in the second or third. Like I think if he was taken there, that would have been good value. But he wasn't looked at that way. He was looked at, especially from many draft experts. Don't forget, they thought he was better than Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson.
Mhm.
And a lot of people thought it was going to be a good pick, and it just didn't work out. So it happens sometimes, but it's still gonna sting that it worked out that way. That they were able to they drafted Mitch Trubisky before Patrick Mahomes, who's already getting considered, and I don't agree with this consideration of one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and Deshaun Watson, who's another great quarterback in this league. That's going to stick with him for the rest of his life. And it's like you said, it's unfair, but it's just the way it worked out. He was a highly touted prospect when he came out of the draft. But I mean, the way I see it with Justin Fields, it really depends on how we're going to see how this works out. And like I said, this could go one of two ways. It's either they just turn their franchise around and they got their first franchise quarterback who is actually a legitimate elite quarterback in this league, or they wind up drafting a bust and it's just the Bears getting their bad luck at quarterback again. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because we weren't able to do that last time. I know we're 2 weeks removed from the draft, but that's something that we had to touch on. That was a big headline from what happened. But to cap off our draft coverage for the past few weeks, from before the draft and after the draft. So for post free agency, what we did was winners and losers. We kind of went through who we thought won free agency and who we thought lost free agency. So I think it would be fitting to kind of end that. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit in future episodes, but I wanted to kind of go through that except for the draft. So we'll go through our winners of the draft, which teams won the draft, which teams lost the draft. Justin, do you want to start off? Who do you think won? We'll start with winners.
Well, of course. Now, I could take it the easy way and say the Baltimore Ravens because, of course, it's the Baltimore Ravens. They always get cap value for the pick. But no, I'm not going to do that. For this one, I actually might go with the Chargers, believe it or not. I'm actually feeling the Chargers this one because they got a tackle in Rashawn Slater, which they absolutely needed to help protect their long-term investment. Hint, hint, Cincinnati and Justin Herbert, who will protect his blind side. They also came in the second round and got Asante Samuel Jr., the new shutdown cornerback, to deal with the absence of Casey Hayward now. And I'm noticing a trend with the way that the Chargers are doing things because for some reason I looked at Instagram and they were comparing the way the Chargers were doing stuff to the way Tampa Bay were doing things last year. And it's kind of similar with the way they're doing it. So I think the Chargers won this one, but again, I wouldn't say they're a clear-cut winner of this draft, but I wouldn't say they're like a loser. I think they are a winner in this draft.
That's a good pick. I didn't think of it that way. But they also went into free agency and they got a all-pro center in there too. So they're really prioritizing it, which I love because that was a big hole for them. But Pat, who is your winner of the draft?
So I think that the Bears, obviously, put themselves in position to be called the winner, but we just talked about them. So I'm going to go with more of a dark horse, I think. I think the Patriots had a very good draft, and it hurts me to say it. And it's just because they went out and got their guy with Mac Jones. I love Mac Jones. He's a zany guy. I couldn't tell you why I like him, and he's going to be hit or miss. But he played well under Nick Saban. Nick Saban's the college Bill Belichick. So let's see him under Bill Belichick, the pro Nick Saban, with some weapons. You can't really do worse than Cam Newton. And you lift this team up. They should have been a 3-13 team last season.
I told you, Justin. That's exactly.
They're a few games out of playoff contention, and if you get a quarterback that can throw the ball, I mean, you're there. And if Mac Jones can develop further, there's a chance he doesn't. This is kind of a ballsy move by Bill Belichick, but Tom Brady was a sixth-round pick. Now he's a six-time Super Bowl champion. So if Mac Jones can even be a shell of what happened the past 20 years, if he gets them to the playoffs a few times, I mean, that's a win. They went out, they got their guy, they took a chance. I think that out of all the quarterbacks, he has the best chance to be a fit with Bill Belichick. It might be unpopular. It might be a dark horse. The Patriots made a play, not being clear-cut, but made a play at being a winner of this draft.
Mac Jones.
Love Mac Jones.
So two of my winners that I had were so I was going to pick the Bears, but I kind of agree with you. I think since we've already talked about them and we've already talked up their move, I'd want to go a different direction. My backup was going to be the Patriots. So I'll have to I think thinking off the top of my head what they did, I think the Dallas Cowboys were a winner because they needed to address that defense. They have a great offense going there. They just got their guy, their quarterback, and they went with they helped on defense, which they needed a lot of help on. And they're going to have to continue doing that in the coming years in order to balance this team and sort of try to become more of a well-rounded squad. I mean, that offense was awesome in those first four games with Dak Prescott. It really showed what Dak Prescott can do when he has the weapons, when he has everything around him. He's one of those quarterbacks where you need to take care of him. He can't just work with less. But it really shows, like, if they have that defense going well, then I could actually call me crazy. I could actually see the Cowboys contending with Dak Prescott if they have everything, all of their ducks in a row.
Crazy. That's a huge if. Oh,
it's a big if, but they need everything to be perfect. And
they're in a weak division too, though, and that helps them.
Exactly, and they could win more games. It comes down to how they could perform in the postseason. Obviously, if Dak Prescott can be playoff Dak. Not that is even a thing, but
that's not a thing.
It could become a thing. It could become a thing. It's possible. He's got Amari Cooper. They took CeeDee Lamb stupidly, but they have CeeDee Lamb. He's a very good wide receiver, turns out. They have Michael Gallup, and let's not forget about Ezekiel Elliott. He is getting a little older, but he's a quarterback where he's a running back where we've seen if he has a well-rounded attack, if he has that offensive line going, he's a legitimate threat, and he's one of the best running backs in the league. They just need to improve that defense. This is a great start with what was it, Micah Parsons, that kid they took, the linebacker. Yeah. So this was a great pick. I think that's what they needed to go with in order to rebuild this defense.
The Cowboys are in a position to win, to be a contender. The Cowboys will cowboy this thing up like they always do. Have high expectations and fail to meet them. Let's not do that.
I'm not saying they will. I'm saying this is a start, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a start. I'll give you that. It's a nice start. It's a good start.
Well, I agree. They probably will screw it up. They're the Cowboys. They're the Cowboys we're talking about here, but they actually made a good move here, and I agree with it. I think they need to work on that secondary as well. I I'm sure some of the players. You mentioned yourself that in a couple episodes ago, Justin. A lot of their players were they had good players, but they just underperformed like really badly. So they could bounce back. They could draft some players next year too, and maybe by 2022 or 2021 they could improve. But I think they set themselves up fairly well. They'll probably screw it up, but pretty good. Pretty good, right?
This gives them a chance.
All right, so we went through the winners of our free agent of our NFL draft, and we were talking off camera. That was actually probably the toughest one to come up with because we didn't really see many clear-cut winners. We were talking off camera a lot about that, but losers. Did we see any losers of the NFL draft, Justin?
There were a couple. I'm gonna leave the obvious one to one of y'all, but for me, an obvious loser was the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, did they have to take a running back with their first round pick in Najee Harris? I get it, he's a stud, but they had more pressing matters to deal with, main so at edge and at line, and they failed to address either of them in the first round, and instead chose a running back. When, to be honest, they have other guys in their backfield that could do just fine as a committee. They didn't need Najee Harris. I understand why they took him. He's a phenomenal player, but I felt like they had more pressing matters at O-line and edge rusher to deal with. So, yeah, I think they're just a loser, like they always are nowadays. I mean, with the Ravens and they're just losers.
That's an interesting pick. I thought it made a little sense. They had a very one-sided, one-dimensional offense. They needed a better running game. James Conner wasn't doing the job, and this could make it a little more two-dimensional. But Pat,
the obvious one is, I think, Jacksonville. Obviously, they had the first round pick. They got the guy that was pretty much unanimously chosen to be the best player you could get in the draft, and they got him, as you should. There's nobody that could steal him from you. But then they went out in the first round, the 25th pick, and got a running back. With that loaded running back room, it didn't make any sense to me. And to me, you were 1-15 last year. You have a lot of places you need improvement. Fixing it at quarterback isn't going to be the end-all, be-all. So I think Jacksonville was the easy one. But I also think that, and this is kind of coming full circle in this podcast, San Francisco blew it with Trey Lance, I think. We'll see.
Wow.
Who knows how any of these quarterbacks are going to do. I would have taken Justin Fields. I don't think Trey Lance is bad. So I don't know if you can call them losers. I was surprised that they went with Trey Lance at number 3 and not Justin Fields.
That's interesting.
That might be an unpopular opinion, but that caught me by surprise. Mac Jones was supposed to be the number 3. That's what a bunch of people were saying. That, as much as I like him, probably a good thing that didn't happen. But I was surprised to see Trey Lance get picked over Justin Fields. I don't know if you can call him a loser, but it wasn't what I would have chosen.
Yeah, I mean, I would have taken Justin Fields too. I think Justin Fields is one of the better players, one of the better quarterbacks in the draft outside of obviously Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. But I mean, they did have it narrowed down to. I still would have been surprised if they took the 49. If they took anybody besides Mac Jones and Trey Lance there. Simply because there were so many reports coming out that it was one of those two, and that Justin Fields wasn't even in the conversation. Now Justin Fields fell really far, and honestly, I thought he was going to fall to 15 for a little while. I thought he was going to fall to the Patriots, and I thought we're getting our guy. We're getting our guy. I like Justin Fields. I wanted him over Mac Jones. Then I heard the Bears traded up, and I was like, I can see where this is going. I was like, God damn it. But
my thought is, if you can call the Bears winners for trading for Justin Fields, then you got to at least make a comment about another team passing on him. I think he's probably the guy with the most potential. A lot of risk, but I think he has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I think the same thing with Trey Lance, though. I think that guy has a lot of potential. I think Trey Lance is going to end up I think he has the abilities. He's shown he's in a small sample size. Granted, he is able to win at least at the college level. So he has that. He has the attitude. There are reports out from scouting reports saying that he's going to be a project, so they'll have to work on him. They still have Garoppolo on the team, so this could be a couple years in the making if he turns out to be a franchise quarterback. But I mean, I have to hand it to the 49ers to drafting their guy. But for me, as for losers, I would have to go with. See, I'm so tempted to say the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm so tempted to say that team, just because they took. And the reason I'm so hesitant on it and not saying they're losers is because the guy they took is a stud, and Joey Burrow might not need that much time if he has wide receiver Jamar Chase. He has T. Higgins. He has who's the other guy? Tyler Boyd. All those 3 targets. He may not need that much time. And I mean, I'm as much as Joe Mixon has gotten a lot of crap. I think he's been very good too. But as for losers, Jacksonville's a good one. I think I had one, but I completely forgot what the pick was.
I know one. I know one.
Go ahead.
Those New York Football Giants.
The Giants. That was my pick. Yeah. See,
not strong.
That made no sense. That team, they have wide receivers. That team has a running back who when he's healthy and playing at his best, he's one of the best running backs in the game.
Mm-hmm.
They have a defense that got really good this past year. And outside of the offensive line, they have the quarterback. We'll see if he can do it, but they have their quarterback who they think is their guy. And they have tight ends as well. They have Evan Engram and they have Kyle Rudolph. The only piece they needed was on the offensive line. And they took another wide receiver. Not just any wide receiver. They didn't take Rashad Bateman. They took, what is his name? Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney. When Rashad Bateman, they didn't even take the best one. They took Kadarius Toney. He wasn't even the best pass catcher on that Gators team. It was Kyle Pitts. And it just made no sense. Now, do I think the Giants are still going to be a good football team? Yeah. They had a good offseason. They had a great free agency. But this Kadarius Toney kid, good Lord. Like, why? Like, what a waste of a first-round pick. I'm sure he could be useful to another team in the first round, maybe, or in the second round. But it's just not a position of need. Like, why are we taking this guy if you're the Giants? You know, I have it out for David Gettleman for doing that. I really do. It just made no sense to me. I didn't even know who the guy was, barely.
That's the G-men for you. The social media game's stronger than the front office.
Basically. Yep, that's the G-men for you.
I don't even know what to say other than Daniel Jones should perform and have like 4,000 yards passing at this point. Like, that's what it's set up to be. I guess this is like a test to see how good Daniel Jones can be, but there are other pressing matters to like tend to. So at this point, I'm like, you have Kenny Galladay, you have Saquon Barkley, who can be a pass catcher. You have Evan Engram, and I say that hesitantly. You have him. You have a red zone target in Kyle Rudolph. You have a number of you have Darius Slayton and
Shepard.
You have weapons for him to throw to. So you didn't really need Kadarius Toney. You could address other things like linebacker, edge. Those things would have been fine. But you chose wide receiver.
Yeah.
And better yet, O-line, because I didn't think Andrew Thomas played that well. And that was their first-round pick last year. Oh, boy. The G-men.
The G-men.
I live in New York. I watched every Giants game because that's what was on. That was what my roommates like. that wasn't the hole they needed. They also let Wayne Gallman walk, which if you have Saquon healthy doesn't really matter. But I mean, we're talking about how bad Jacksonville was for drafting a running back.
Mhm.
You didn't draft a running back at all. Wayne Gallman played very solid this season, and Blake Martinez, I think that this also might be an unpopular opinion. Little bit of a hole in the defense. The defense could have used some fixing. The running back position could have used a pick later in the draft. None of it. You went all out with the one position that you really didn't need to worry about. And testing Daniel Jones is a bigger risk because if it doesn't work out, you set the rest of the team farther back. You're not a quarterback away from you're entirely in rebuild mode if this doesn't work.
Mhm.
Absolutely. All right. Now, so that'll wrap up our draft coverage for tonight. However, there's an interesting headline going on that now a couple of weeks ago, or it was maybe a week ago, Tim Tebow, he was a former NFL quarterback. He was a first round pick, correct? He was taken really high in the first round.
No.
And where was he taken?
To the Broncos, I believe.
20. All right. Yeah, I've forgot. But they end up. So he hasn't been in the league. He goes to the New York. He goes to baseball and he works his way up. He's been in the minor league system for the New York Mets the past few years. He never made it past AAA or AA, I believe.
I think he got to AAA.
He got to, I believe, yeah, I thought he got to AAA. Never got to the big leagues, regardless. And he quit that, and he decided he called up the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's like, I kind of want to be a tight end here, and they ended up signing him actually. So this is interesting news. A former first round pick out of college in the NFL. He was a quarterback. Now he's going to turn into a tight end. What do you think about this, Justin?
Of all people to play your tight end, others more deserving, more talented, and just overall a better prospect for you, you choose Timothy Tebow as your tight end, a quarterback turned tight end, when there are other better tight ends still available in free agency. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm not happy with this. I don't know how to feel about this except shock, and the fact he made it this far as like getting a contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars to actually be a part of their team is ridiculous. But then again, Urban Meyer was his college head coach. He was like, let's just give him a shot. But I don't know what to say here. How?
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yes, it's very tough. I don't know why they did this.
And he's old. He's 32, 33, right?
Yeah,
Wide receivers can go longer. Tight ends get beat up. And he's already old. This is a 1 or 2 year investment. More talented players could have gotten it. You could have developed another guy. Only Urban Meyer would do this. And this will be great for ticket sales in week 1. But after that, I don't see what use you could get out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So outside of the fact that Urban Meyer was his old head coach, old head coach, I think, let's face it, the reason he was signed at all is because his name is Tim Tebow. And I'm sure he's a very solid athlete, but his name's Tim Tebow. That's how he got to the minor league system of a different pro sport. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure he's a very solid athlete, but he's old. He's not all that big of a guy. And, he's never really actually proven himself as a pass catcher. He's always just shown, okay, I can do a little bit in baseball, and I'm a good quarterback, and I'm a great quarterback in college. And won a playoff game for Denver that one time. But, his name's Tim Tebow, and that's the reason. And, it's going to be really ESPN is going to take their pants off when Trevor Lawrence throws a touchdown pass to Tim Tebow.
As if he makes the roster.
Just think about
he
what
throws a touchdown pass.
Yeah, right. Did I say when?
Yeah, and in this
I kinda
case,
wanna-
it's an important difference.
Absolutely. I kind of want to see that happen. I just want to see the media reaction to that. How they're just gonna be all over it, and when it's literally just a touchdown pass to a guy who's basically irrelevant now in the sports world. Basically, it's just one of those things. He's good Lord. That's literally his name is Tim Tebow. That's his name. That's how he got to the pro baseball. And that's how he's gotten so many chances in the NFL as a quarterback as well. And there's not much to it besides that, honestly. But it's an interesting.
I guess.
Absolutely. All right. Now, that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening to us. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on Spotify and Google Play. Also be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Over and out.